We're now in the inner quad of Norwich School. This is quite an ancient part, and actually this is where we can see the first changes from the medieval building. In 1860, in order to try and actually boost numbers and look after children better, a Victorian boarding house was constructed. It now actually forms the history department and part of the art and craft department, but it was an important venture. But the most important part of this quad is the actual structure which we called new buildings, built mainly of flint. This was built in 1908, and all of a sudden there were 6 spare classrooms, and the chapel could be emptied and restored as a religious place and not just a school. Of course, it was actually quite a revelation to actually build a large building like this. It's using traditional materials, and it was a great bonus to the school. But actually, as always seems to happen with these things, by the time it was running smoothly, about 1910, we're looking at only 4 years before the outbreak of the First World War. And now we're looking at buildings of various ages. Behind me is the actual north side of the chapel, which in itself was built in about 1316. You can see that it's got the round lower crypt windows, and they actually are quite an unusual feature. But what was more important about the buildings here is that we see a real expansion of the school in the 19th century. The actual bell tower, which was done in Victorian times, is still used to call pupils to lessons. And next to that we see the pointed arches of certainly Victorian Gothic building. Quite unusual, and it was quite a move on for the school. And then when new buildings was built in 1908, the architect went back in time almost to quite a traditional Gothic structure in terms of the stonework and the windows, and he picked flint and freestone, so it actually looks kind of medieval look. And this building actually transformed Norwich School, giving greater freedom to children, allowing a broader curriculum. So actually science began to be taught, 1 or 2 languages, and mathematics added to what formerly was quite a narrow curriculum. The wall on one side dates back to the 12th century, where you can see School End House. School End House was actually built as a separate building, not part of the school. It's a lean-to structure leaning on the chapel east wall, and it was used to house curates of the cathedral for 200 or 300 years. 100 years ago, it was actually leased to Norwich School and is now the school common room. The little garden behind it is known as Matron's Garden. More importantly, the wall next to it is an ancient wall which dates back to the 12th century, so anything to do with moving it, building things on it, or actually changing it are impossible. Well, this little area from the chapel coming northwards was the original patch of Norwich School. It didn't actually run to include new buildings. So what was of use to the school was that in 1905 an extra patch of land was leased to the school called Ferrers Tenement, and on that space became the main playground, and also a number of new rooms were made available. That was important because this was a very constricted site. By adding that piece of land, we could actually build new buildings, and the boundary, the ancient medieval boundary, goes straight through new buildings.